Hey guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you're all doing really well. Today's topic is about how much damage can too much casual sex be? It's incredibly challenging to dissect how much damage it can do or how much benefit it can bring without applying any moral pressure or without highlighting the different ways in which men and women practice casual sex. Even talking about this topic opens up a Pandora's box because the question of how much damage is too much casual sex opens up another set of wild questions, such as damaging to whom and isn't it just physical? Today's culture is incredibly sexually liberal, and it deliberately overlooks some very important evolutionary factors that help us establish whether casual sex is good for us. What if it's doing more damage than we can possibly imagine? What if we're willingly harming ourselves by practicing an extreme level of sexual openness? Let's look at the reality of casual sex in 21st century without applying any moral pressure. Let's just look at the facts. If an attractive person from the opposite sex came up to you and said, "Hey, I find you very attractive. Would you like to have sex?" What would you respond? Well, if you're like the 100% of women in a Florida study, you would empathically say no. And if you're a man, there's a 75% chance that you would say yes. And sure, Florida is probably a unique example, so let's look at one of our more egalitarian countries. French women are increasingly sexually liberal. They consume a lot of porn, they practice internet hookup culture, and they typically have a lot of sexual partners. Even when operating out of a much more sexually open mindset, when French women were presented with the opportunity to engage in sexual activities with a random stranger, only 3% of them agreed in the case of him being highly attractive, and 0% agreed in the case of him being average looking. In contrast, 83% of French men agreed to have sex with a woman if she was highly attractive, and 60% agreed to have sex with her if she was average looking. Dating apps currently dominate our culture. 50% of marriages in America end up in divorce. In 1972, 22% of marriages ended by the 15th year, and in 1997, the figure had risen with 33%. There are 13 divorces per hour in England and Wales. 1 in 7 divorces is granted as a result of adultery. Monogamy is becoming more and more obsolete. And of course it would. If you're a man, casual sex gives you such an easy way of fulfilling one of your most ancient and primal desires, the desire for sexual variety. And if you're a woman, casual sex gives you the ability to manifest sexual freedom, to feel empowered by your divine right to choose who you get to sleep with. It would be a signal of sanity to ask, okay, where is all of this taking us? There is such an immense amount of data that shows the mating selection pressures that our ancestors were faced with. We don't even need to dive deep into this because in evolutionary terms, if something existed, that means someone allowed it to. Someone allowed casual sex to exist based on biological, physiological, and psychological needs. But let's not forget that lust is also something that is millions of years old, and it's something that we're still very much capable of. That means someone allowed it to exist, right? President Jimmy Carter once said to a reporter that he had lust in his heart. All he did was honestly highlight a universal male desire for sexual variety. A massive study of 52 different cultures over 6 continents and 13 islands shows that even in Norway, where we can see a very high level of gender equality, men desire more sexual partners than women at different time intervals, such as 1 year, 10 years, or 30 years. For example, over the next 30 years, Norwegian women wish to have an average of 5 sexual partners. In contrast, Norwegian men desire roughly 25. In the business world, we say that time is money. Well, in evolutionary terms, time equals sexual opportunity. And this answers the question why people don't want to commit nowadays. And this is actually the very answer that they give when they're confronted with their own promiscuity. You'll hear them say, "Oh my God, I don't have time for that. Well, I can't commit right now. I'm so busy. I want to focus on myself." What they don't realize is that they're not saving time by practicing casual sex. They're not safeguarding their most precious assets for later use. And they're not increasing their sexual market value, although some men would argue. In reality, casual sex equals scattered sexual resources, especially for women. And those scattered resources go to lower value mating prospects. And this applies both to men and women. That in itself diminishes the standards and therefore the likelihood of assigning these sexual resources to a favorable prospect. And that too applies both to men and women. And finally, it narrows down the dating prospects that people actually have access to. Women's chances diminish because they give up on their leverage. In evolutionary terms, as much as we hate it, this leverage was called chastity. And men's chances diminish because they show that they have an inclination towards pursuing short-term sexual opportunities. And in the course of evolution, we've seen that women don't like that. And all of this damage is simply in biological and physiological sense. Now, let's look at things from a psychological and cultural point of view. And this is where I'm about to apply moral pressure, so I'm just giving you a heads up. If you enjoyed that so far, feel free to watch the rest of the video on my Patreon. You'll find the link in the description down below. This is where you'll also find a bunch of other mental health resources. So please like this video, subscribe, send to a friend, and I'll see you soon.